Why was her beacon transmitting 3 weeks after she was buried? The signal broke through static like a heartbeat refusing to die. At 02:07 hours inside the low-lit operations center at Coronado, a room built for precision and silence, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hammer Rodriguez nearly spilled his coffee when he heard it. That sound, the sharp, coded chirp of an emergency SEAL distress beacon, the one he'd folded away in his heart 3 weeks ago. The young signals officer looked up, pale and wide-eyed. "Sir, you need to hear this. Authentication code matches Lieutenant Allen." Rodriguez froze. Layla Allen. He said her name in a eulogy not even a month ago. He'd handed a folded flag to her younger sister, told her that her sibling died as she lived, brave, decisive, the kind of soldier who made others stand straighter. He remembered her coffin, the weight of silence during the rifle salute, the disbelief that hung in the air. But now her beacon was chirping again. He leaned over the console, eyes tracing the signal coordinates on the screen. It wasn't just anywhere. The beacon was transmitting from inside Iran, 40 miles southeast of Tehran. A black site, a place not even officially acknowledged to exist. Rodriguez felt the world narrow around him, sound folding into a thin hum. "Run the verification again." "Already did, sir, 3 times. Code matches her SEAL identifier perfectly. It's her beacon." He didn't speak for several seconds, just stared at the blinking light pulsing in the desert, its rhythm steady, stubborn, alive. "Get me JSOC on encrypted comms," he said finally. His voice was low, but every man in the room heard the steel beneath it. "And wake up the team." Because if Layla Allen was alive, they were bringing her home. 8,000 feet above the Iranian desert, the world was darkness and silence. Master Chief Jake Phoenix Sullivan checked his altimeter, the glow from his wrist display faint beneath his gloves. Wind roared in his ears, his body slicing through the cold night air. Below him, 5 other members of SEAL Team 3 fell in tight formation, their black tactical suits blending perfectly into the void. The mission briefing had been simple on paper, impossible in reality. Recover a SEAL presumed dead, held deep inside enemy territory. No air cover, no official footprint, no diplomatic safety net. But it wasn't just any SEAL. It was her. Layla Allen, the first woman to earn a combat trident. The one who'd made history and enemies in equal measure. The one they'd buried, cried for, and never stopped believing in. Phoenix had served with her for 3 years. He remembered the day she arrived at the unit, shorter than most of the guys, eyes too calm for her age. She didn't demand respect, she just worked for it, bled for it. Past Bud S. with 2 cracked ribs she'd never reported. Outshot half the team in sniper quals. Carried more weight than men twice her size. He once seen her walk into a firefight with her rifle in one hand and a wounded teammate over her shoulder. She was quiet, calculating, but when things went bad she became a storm. Now she was down there in that hidden hell, and somehow she'd managed to activate a beacon that should have been crushed the moment she was captured. Phoenix felt the familiar tightening in his chest, that blend of fear and focus that only came before impossible missions. 2 minutes to target, came Rodriguez's voice through bone conduction comms, calm and distant. Predator drone shows minimal movement, no signs they've picked up the signal. "Copy that," Phoenix replied. His voice was even, but his pulse was. He glanced toward his men, Joker, Reaper, Doc, Spectre, Titan. Their names carried weight earned through years of shared fire and loss. None of them said a word. None needed to. They all knew what it meant to go after one of their own. They hit their chutes at 800 feet, 6 black canopies whispering open in the desert wind. One by one, they landed in a dry riverbed 2 clicks from the facility. Every movement rehearsed, silent, predatory. Within minutes, the chutes were buried, the gear assembled, and the team began their approach, low, slow, invisible. The desert stretched around them like an ocean of shadow. Ahead, the target complex appeared through night vision: low buildings, razor wire fences, 3 towers, and a handful of guards. A ghost of a prison built to vanish beneath the sand. Reaper the sniper whispered from Overwatch. 6 exterior guards, standard pattern, no alert. Phoenix crouched, studying the structure through his scope. The beacon tracker on his wrist pulsed faintly. Signals 30 meters underground, he said quietly. Main building. Copy, said Doc. If she's alive, she's hurt. 3 weeks in that place, no one walks out fine. She activated that beacon, Phoenix answered. She's still fighting. The team reached the outer fence at 2:48. Spectre, the demolitions man, attached a shaped charge to the chain link, a faint hiss. Then the metal parted like cloth. They slipped through, ghosts among the dunes. They were 30 meters from the secondary fence when fate blinked. A lone guard, Iranian, mid-30s, uniform wrinkled, cigarette half-lit, walked out of a blind spot between buildings. He wasn't supposed to be there. His eyes widened when he saw 6 figures in black tactical gear. For half a second, time stopped. Then his hand shot for his radio. A muffled cough of Joker's suppressed MP7 dropped him, but not before his thumb brushed the transmit key. The dead man's cry echoed over every guard frequency in the compound. Phoenix swore under his breath, "Compromise, we're live." The night exploded. Alarms wailed. Floodlights roared to life, slicing the darkness with harsh white beams. Guards poured from doorways, AKs chattering. "Overwatch, clear those towers," Phoenix ordered. Reaper's rifle cracked twice, 2 guards dropped, lifeless silhouettes falling from height, but more were coming. So many more. The quiet insertion had turned into open war. Phoenix's boots hit the concrete lip of the main building. Titan covered the flank, his machine gun roaring like thunder in the night. Doc Spectre, breach point right side. They pushed through the main entrance as Iranian soldiers charged from the opposite hall. The doorway became a funnel of death, short bursts, precise, brutal. Phoenix's rifle barked in rhythm, the smell of gunpowder sharp and metallic. Somewhere in that chaos, he felt it, a pulse beneath the noise, the instinct that she was near. Titan slammed a breaching charge against a heavy steel door marked with Farsi warnings. "On your call." "Do it." The explosion shattered the hallway. Smoke poured out as they descended into the bowels of the earth. The underground section was worse, concrete, narrow, endless. Fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing like flies. They split into teams, Joker and Spectre east, Phoenix with Titan and Doc west. The beacon signal was growing stronger, steady now, insistent. "Contact rear," Titan shouted. Boots pounded down the stairwell behind them. Phoenix spun, firing short controlled bursts as Titan's machine gun drowned the corridor in thunder. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Door after door, empty interrogation rooms, blood on the walls, the smell of bleach failing to hide rot. Phoenix kept moving, tracking the beacon. 30 meters ahead, 25:15. Then he heard it. A voice, weak, raw but unmistakably American. I told you my brothers were coming for me." Phoenix's heart slammed against his ribs. That voice, it couldn't be anyone else. He reached the final door, heavy steel with an electronic lock. "Spectre, I need you here, now." Seconds later, the demolitions man appeared, already pulling det cord from his pack. He didn't ask questions, just worked. Inside the cell, shouting erupted, foreign, panicked. Furniture scraped. Someone yelling in Farsi. Phoenix could hear the words move her now. "Ready," Spectre said. "Do it." The blast tore the door off its hinges. Smoke rolled in waves. Phoenix pushed through, rifle raised, and the sight froze him in place. Layla was there. Strapped to a chair, head tilted, blood matting her hair. Her face was swollen, lips cracked. But her eyes, those impossible, defiant eyes, found him instantly. Two men stood beside her. One reached for his gun, the other for a radio. Phoenix didn't hesitate. Two controlled shots, both fell before they could speak. He crossed the room, cutting her restraints. "Layla, it's Phoenix. We're getting you out." Her lips trembled, but she smiled, small, fierce. "Knew you'd come," she whispered. "Told them, SEALs don't leave anyone behind." Doc knelt beside her, checking vitals, murmuring under his breath. "Dehydration, contusions, internal bruising. She's bad, but she's alive." "I can walk," she said, trying to stand, then collapsed. Phoenix caught her. She felt light, too light, a body carved down to survival. "Not today," he said softly. "We've got you." "Give her a stim," Doc ordered. "We move now." The shot brought color back to her eyes, weak but burning. She looked up at Phoenix. "There are others, 2 CIA operatives, East Wing, 3rd Block. You have to." Before she could finish, Phoenix's radio crackled. "Already found them," Joker's voice came through, breathless. "One walking, one barely. We're bringing them." The gunfire above was worsening. The building shook. "Rodriguez, this is Phoenix," he said into his comm. "Package secured, 2 additional friendlies. We need immediate extract, danger close." "Copy that," came the calm voice. "Extraction in 7 minutes, hold position." 7 minutes. In combat, it might as well be forever. Layla steadied herself against him, her breath ragged. She'd been broken, beaten, but not erased. Somewhere beneath the pain, the soldier was still there, sharp, alive. As the team began their exfil toward the surface, Phoenix risked a glance at her. She was barely standing, yet holding a sidearm he'd handed her, covering their 6 without hesitation. Every step they took was through fire and chaos. And though she stumbled, she never let go. How long can 7 minutes last when the world is burning? The corridors trembled with gunfire. Concrete dust filled the air like fog, choking the light from the flickering bulbs overhead. Phoenix moved first, Layla clinging to his shoulder, her body trembling with effort. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't far from it either. Behind them, Titan's machine gun hammered at the approaching guards, every round carving out a few more seconds of life. "Keep moving," Phoenix shouted. Layla's boots scraped against the floor, her strength fading, but her spirit, that stubborn, impossible spark, refused to die. 3 weeks in captivity, 3 weeks of interrogation, beating, silence, and still, somehow, she'd held onto the code. The one thing they couldn't take, the beacon. Doc moved alongside, one hand pressing against his own bleeding thigh, the other guiding her forward. "Vitals are unstable," he muttered, "but she's holding." "She'll make it," Phoenix said. He didn't believe it at first. Then she glanced at him, eyes swollen but steady, and he knew. She wasn't just holding on, she was enduring. They reached the stairwell leading back to ground level, only to find it crawling with hostiles. 24, maybe more. Phoenix counted shapes through the smoke. Too many. Titan glanced back. "We're boxed in." "Spectre," Phoenix called, "give us a way out." The demolitions expert nodded, dropping to a knee and planting a breaching charge on the side wall. The detonation was sharp and close, shaking the corridor and filling it with debris. When the dust cleared, a ragged hole gaped into an adjacent hallway. "Move," Phoenix ordered. They slipped through, Layla's breathing ragged in his ear. Each inhale sounded like pain, but she said nothing. She didn't ask how far they had to go. She didn't ask if they'd make it. She already knew the answer because SEALs don't ask those questions. They go. The Eastern Wing was chaos. Joker and Spectre were dragging the 2 rescued CIA operatives toward the main exit. One was limp, unconscious, blood seeping from a shoulder wound. The other stumbled forward, delirious but alive. "Contact rear," Reaper's voice crackled over comms from above. "They're coming hard, north corridor, maybe 40 hostiles." Phoenix scanned the tactical tablet strapped to his chest. The compound was swarming, red blips moving like ants. "Extraction window in 4 minutes," he said. "We hold till then." Titan's laugh was bitter, breathless. "That's 4 minutes longer than we deserve." They reached the main floor again. The smell of burning oil and blood hung thick in the air. The Iranian guards had entrenched positions near the exits, turning every hallway into a death trap. Reaper, Phoenix said, "I need your eyes." "Copy, Tower 2's compromised. I'm shifting to new Overwatch position. Give me 30 seconds. Phoenix exhaled, reloading. "We don't have 30. Then from outside, the sharp crack of Reaper's rifle split the chaos. One by one, the guards at the southern entrance dropped precision shots, each exactly where they needed to be. "That's your door," came the sniper's calm drawl. "Go." Phoenix motioned the team forward. Titan led with suppressing fire, Spectre and Joker covering flanks. Layla was in the middle, her steps faltering but her grip still tight on her pistol. Doc was right behind, jaw set in pain but eyes locked on her. Outside, the desert glared under floodlights and muzzle flashes. The air was a storm of dust and bullets. Vehicles skidded into position. The Iranian reinforcements had arrived. "Move, move," Phoenix shouted. They broke cover and ran, a desperate sprint through open ground. Tracers screamed overhead. The sand erupted in tiny fountains where rounds hit. Phoenix half-dragged, half-carried Layla as they ran, the heat from nearby explosions washing over them. Spectre smoke out. White plumes blossomed across the courtyard, swallowing everything in a thick fog. For a heartbeat, it felt like safety. But then came the metallic whine of a rocket. RPG. Phoenix dove, pulling Layla down with him. The explosion slammed into a nearby wall, the shockwave rolling across the ground like thunder. Titan roared in pain, hit, but still firing. "Doc, check him," Phoenix ordered, his voice hoarse. "I said I'm good," Titan growled, blood slick on his arm. "Just keep her moving." In the haze, the distant sound of helicopter rotors began to grow, faint at first, then louder. "Birds inbound," Rodriguez's voice crackled through comms. "2 MH-60s. You've got 90 seconds. Phoenix looked toward the horizon and saw the shadows rising against the dawn. 2 Blackhawks, fast and low, slicing through the night. Layla's hand tightened on his vest. "You actually came," she whispered. He didn't look at her, couldn't. The lump in his throat was too thick. "You never gave us a choice." The Blackhawks thundered in. Door gunners opened fire, the rhythmic beat of miniguns shredding enemy positions. The first helicopter hovered just long enough for the crew chief to wave them forward. "Go, go, go," Phoenix shouted. He pushed Layla toward the open bay. Titan and Joker lifted the wounded CIA man, Doc helping the other. Spectre laid down fire until the last possible second, then sprinted for the ramp. Phoenix turned for one final sweep and saw movement in the haze. A figure, one of the Iranian officers, raising a sidearm toward the chopper. Without thinking, Layla twisted out of Phoenix's grasp, fired once. The man dropped. Her aim was shaky but true. Phoenix grabbed her again, half carrying her up the ramp. The moment they were aboard, the Blackhawks surged upward, rotor wash tearing through the dust below. The second chopper lifted behind them, Titan covering their retreat with the last rounds of his machine gun. Below, the compound burned, a living inferno against the cold desert. "Everyone accounted for?" Phoenix asked. 6 SEALs, 2 friendlies, 1 miracle, Joker replied, voice strained but alive. Layla slumped against the bulkhead, eyes half closed. The wind from the open door tangled her hair. Doc was already working on her, IV in, oxygen mask over her face. She looked at Phoenix through the blur. "Took you long enough," she murmured. He smiled, couldn't help it. "We had to finish your funeral first." Her laugh was a rasp, broken and human. "Hope you said something nice." "You'd have hated it," Joker called from across the cabin. "Too many adjectives." For the first time in 3 weeks, she smiled, a real one, faint but alive. They cleared the combat zone. Behind them, Iranian reinforcements swarmed what was left of the black site. The comms were alive with chaos. Rodriguez's voice cut through it all. Phoenix, JSOC has eyes on your extraction. Good work. The Iranians are scrambling fighters. You need to get to international airspace now. Copy, Phoenix replied. We're en route. He glanced at Layla again. Doc was checking her vitals, the small screen of his med monitor glowing faint green. Her pulse was weak but steady. Phoenix leaned closer. Hey, he said softly, stay with us. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she seemed somewhere else far away. Then her voice came, faint but calm. They tried to trade me. He frowned. What? The Iranians. They weren't just interrogating me. They wanted to sell me. Her voice was thin, each word costing her. To the Russians, Wagner Group. Phoenix felt the air leave his chest. If she was right, the stakes were bigger than rescue. They were negotiating, she continued. 3 days from now, a handoff in Syria. I heard them. I remember every word. Doc shook his head. She needs rest, not intel briefs. Phoenix's voice hardened. We need everything she remembers. Layla exhaled slowly, eyelids fluttering. They thought I'd break, but I planned, I listened. I waited. I kept the beacon hidden until they started talking about the trade. How'd you hide it? Joker asked from across the cabin. Her cracked lips twitched into something that almost resembled a grin. You don't want to know. For a moment, even in that rattling chopper, surrounded by blood, exhaustion, and static, everyone smiled. 2 hours later, the ocean appeared beneath them, black, endless, safe. The USS Baton rose from the waves like a steel giant, its deck lined with waiting medics and Marines. As the Black Hawk descended, the dawn broke over the horizon, crimson and gold bleeding into the sky. Phoenix stared at it, silent. The mission wasn't over, not even close, but in that sliver of light he felt something shift inside him. They'd done the impossible. They'd brought someone back from the dead. As the chopper touched down, medics rushed aboard. Layla was lifted gently onto a stretcher, IV lines swaying, monitors beeping faintly. She grabbed Phoenix's hand before they wheeled her away. Don't let them forget what we saw, she whispered. We won't, he promised. Her grip tightened, then softened. She closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to rest. Later, as the med bay doors closed behind her, Phoenix stood alone on the flight deck, watching the sunrise. The horizon glowed, the sea below endless. He thought about what she'd endured, the pain, the silence, the courage to wait, and how, even when everyone else believed she was gone, she'd refused to let go. Rodriguez's voice came through the headset. Phoenix, the intel she gave us checks out. JSOC on high alert. You and your team just prevented something catastrophic. Phoenix didn't answer right away. He was watching the horizon still, the red sun rising over the steel waves. Finally, he said, we didn't prevent it, she did. There was a long pause. Then Rodriguez replied quietly, understood. Phoenix took off his helmet, the wind tugging at his hair, the salt in the air sharp against his skin. Sometimes, he thought, victory didn't roar. It just breathed barely, but enough to live another day. And somewhere below deck, a woman who should have been dead was breathing. Alive. Because she never stopped believing someone would come. What does survival sound like after 3 weeks of screams? For Layla Allen, it was the rhythmic hiss of oxygen and the quiet beeping of a monitor. Aboard the USS Baton, everything was too clean, too white, too still. She wasn't chained anymore, but her body still braced for pain each time a door opened. A nurse adjusted her IV. Metal instruments clinked softly. Somewhere far off, a helicopter landed on deck, the sound dull through steel bulkheads. Layla's eyes drifted to the ceiling. Every breath reminded her she was free, and yet, Part of her wasn't sure what freedom even meant anymore. Rodriguez watched from behind the glass, hands folded behind his back. The medics had said she'd live, but they couldn't tell him what she'd bring back with her, what she'd seen, what it had done to her. He'd buried her once. He wasn't ready to lose her again, not to the kind of ghosts no medic could treat. Phoenix entered quietly, still in his flight suit, dust and blood dried on his sleeves. He stopped at her bedside, unsure whether to speak. Layla turned her head. Her voice was a whisper made of sand. "We made it." "You made it," he said. "The rest of us just followed the beacon." A faint smile touched her lips. "Told you it worked." He chuckled, then looked away, guilt flickering behind his eyes. "We should have come sooner." "You came when you could," she murmured. "I had to stay alive long enough to make it worth it." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy with everything they didn't need to say. Phoenix finally asked, "How bad was it?" She stared at the ceiling again. "Bad enough that I started talking to shadows, but not bad enough to forget procedure." "Procedure kept you alive." "No," she said softly. "Hope did. Procedure just gave it something to hide behind." Hours later, the team gathered in the ship's briefing room. The lights were dim, faces drawn, uniforms stained with salt and smoke. Rodriguez stood at the head of the table, screen behind him glowing with satellite imagery of the desert compound, now reduced to rubble. "Good work," he began, voice even. "You brought her back, but her intel opens a bigger door, and it's one we can't ignore." The map changed, a chain of red markers spreading across the Middle East. According to Lieutenant Allen, Iran planned to trade her to the Wagner Group. The exchange was scheduled for 72 hours from now, in Syria. Joker let out a low whistle. "So we walked into a rescue and walked out with World War III on a timer." Rodriguez didn't smile. "Not if we move first." Phoenix leaned forward. "What's the target?" "Joint Iranian-Wagner operations cell outside Deir ez-Zor. Communications hub, weapons storage, forward coordination." Allen overheard details. "We're cross-checking them now." Doc shifted uncomfortably. "And her condition?" Rodriguez hesitated. "Stable, but she's insisting on being debriefed personally." "She's barely conscious," Phoenix said. "She's also the only person who heard the plan firsthand," Rodriguez replied. "Command wants her insight as soon as she can speak." There was a beat of silence. Spectre finally muttered, "She's tougher than all of us. She'll talk when she's ready." That evening, Phoenix returned to the med bay. The smell of antiseptic hit him before the door even opened. Layla was sitting upright now, IV still in her arm, hair damp from a sponge bath. She looked like someone stitched together from resolve and pain. "I heard you're debriefing me already," she said without turning. He took the chair beside her. "Only if you're up for it." Her eyes met his. "I didn't survive 3 weeks in a black site to nap through the briefing." He handed her a tablet, satellite photos, maps. She studied them slowly, mouth tightening. "That's it," she said, pointing. "This facility, that's where I heard them talk. Iranian liaison, Russian advisor, translator from the Wagner Group." The name Volkov came up more than once. "Viktor Volkov?" Phoenix asked. Layla nodded. "Former Spetsnaz Alpha. He was in the next room during one interrogation. I recognized his accent. He kept saying the same thing. The woman is leverage." She set the tablet down, fingers trembling slightly. "They weren't after secrets, Phoenix. They were after proof. Proof that they could break an American seal, the first female one at that." He swallowed hard, "But they didn't." Her eyes glistened. "No, they just broke everything around me." The med bay lights dimmed for night, but neither of them moved. After a long silence, Phoenix asked quietly, "When we found you, you said something. That you knew we were coming. You really believed that." Layla looked at him, exhaustion softening into something fragile. Belief had nothing to do with it. It's what we're trained for, never leave anyone behind. I just held them to their word. He smiled faintly. We heard the beacon and we didn't hesitate. I know, her voice cracked. That's what kept me alive, the idea that someone somewhere would refuse to let go. For a moment, Phoenix wasn't a soldier, just a man listening to someone who'd been to hell and clawed her way back. By dawn, Layla's condition had improved enough for her to sit through a formal debrief. The briefing room was quiet except for the hum of equipment. Phoenix stood beside her, protective without realizing it. Across the table, Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on a secure video link. Her tone was sharp, but her eyes carried something softer. Lieutenant Allen, the Admiral said, your survival and the intelligence you provided have prevented what could have been a regional catastrophe. You've done your country proud. Layla's posture was rigid despite the pain. Ma'am, with respect, I didn't do it for the country, I did it for them. She nodded toward the team behind her. They never gave up on me. That's what America is to me, people who come back. The Admiral paused, visibly moved. Understood, Lieutenant. The President will be informed of your courage. For now, rest. You've earned it. The screen went dark. The room was silent. Then Joker muttered, did anyone else feel like we just watched a legend get born? Layla turned to him, voice rough. Don't start that. Legends die fast, I'm still breathing. Doc grinned, barely. The laughter that followed was small but real, the kind that comes only after you've seen death and decided to live anyway. That night, as the ship cut through calm seas, Phoenix stood on deck beside her. She wore a gray navy sweatshirt, hair tied back, medical tape still on her arm. The wind carried the smell of salt and jet fuel. Can't sleep, he asked. Can't stop hearing it, she said. The walls, the questions, the sound of boots. He nodded. It'll fade. Will it? She turned to him, eyes searching. You've been captured before. Almost, he admitted, but not like that, not that long. She looked back at the horizon. Then don't tell me it fades, it changes, that's all. They stood in silence for a while. The sky above them was endless, 1,000 stars scattered like broken glass. Layla finally spoke again. You know what the hardest part was? What? The quiet. Not the pain, not the fear. The quiet after the beatings, when you realize nobody's coming, and then you hear your own mind start to lie to you. He said nothing. She continued, voice trembling slightly. That's when I decided I wouldn't wait for rescue. I'd earn it. I'd make sure the people looking for me had something to find. The beacon, Phoenix said. She nodded. Hope's not passive, Phoenix, it's work. By morning, the baton reached Allied waters. The team disembarked briefly to hand over the rescued CIA agents. Word spread quietly through the ranks, the Ghost Seal was alive. Sailors saluted as Layla passed, their eyes wide with awe. She hated it. I'm not a ghost, she whispered to Phoenix, just tired. But inside, something was rekindling, not pride, not yet, purpose. She knew what the Iranians and Wagner were planning, and she wasn't done fighting. 12 hours later, Phoenix and his team were ordered back to the briefing room. Rodriguez was waiting, face set in grim determination. On the screen beside him, satellite feeds showed convoys moving through the Syrian desert. The intel Lieutenant Allen provided is confirmed, he said. We have 72 hours before the joint operation launches. The President's authorized immediate response. Phoenix folded his arms. Team 3. Team 3, Rodriguez confirmed. 12 hours to rest, then you're going back out. A low murmur rippled through the room, fatigue, disbelief, then acceptance. That was the SEAL way. You rest when it's over, and it was never over. After the meeting, Phoenix stopped by the med bay again. Layla was sitting up, reading through a secure tablet, her eyes alert despite the sedatives. Rumor says you're joining mission planning, he said. She looked up, smirking faintly. Rumors fast. You should be recovering. I am, she said, Planning is therapy. He shook his head, but the truth was, seeing her that way, focused, fierce, was its own kind of medicine for everyone. "I'll talk to the Admiral," he said. "See if we can patch you in remotely." "Thank you." Then her expression shifted. "Phoenix, there's more. In that facility I saw maps, notes. The Iranians aren't working alone. Chinese military advisors, North Korean cyber specialists. It's bigger than we thought." He felt a chill trace down his spine. "You're saying this wasn't just a trade deal?" She met his gaze. "No, it's a coalition, and we just put ourselves on their radar." When Phoenix left the med bay, dawn was breaking again. Another day no one expected to see. He stood by the rail, watching the sun rise over the horizon, the sea turning gold beneath it. Somewhere below deck, Layla was alive, breathing, planning, fighting. He thought about the words she'd said in the desert, the ones that haunted him most. "I knew you'd come." It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't blind faith, it was the creed they all carried. Because when you wear the trident, you don't measure belief in miracles. You measure it in brothers and sisters who refuse to stop looking. And for Phoenix, for all of them, that was enough. What does vengeance look like when it wears a uniform? Layla Allen stared at her reflection in the darkened mid-bay window. The glass gave back a pale, bruised ghost draped in hospital fabric and IV lines, eyes sunken yet defiant. Outside, the sea whispered against steel. Inside, monitors hummed, a lullaby for soldiers who'd forgotten how to rest. Her body was healing, her mind was at war. Every time she blinked, she saw that room, the chair, the blood, the questions that came like waves. Yet beneath the memories lived a new rhythm, the sound of rotor blades, the moment she felt the air on her face again, the promise she'd made without words. If she lived, she'd finish what they started. The conference suite aboard the Baton glowed with sterile light. Phoenix and his men filed in, their uniforms replaced by clean fatigues. Exhaustion clung to them like smoke, but their eyes were alert. The air smelled of burnt coffee and adrenaline. Rodriguez stood beside the Admiral's live feed. "Intel confirms the Wagner-Iranian alliance. They're preparing a joint strike on coalition logistics hubs in Iraq and Syria. If they succeed, we'll lose regional stability for months." On the screen, the map pulsed with red zones. "We strike first," Admiral Chen said. "A surgical hit to decapitate the command node. Lieutenant Allen will assist with tactical planning from the med bay." At that, Phoenix exhaled slowly. She won again. Hours later, Layla sat upright in her hospital bed, a headset pressed against her bandaged temple. Screens surrounded her, feeds, maps, drone telemetry. She could barely move her legs without pain, but her voice was steady, professional, lethal. "Reaper, you'll take high ground West Ridge. Limited visibility after 200, so mark targets with IR strobes before engagement. Spectre, rig fallback explosives. Volkov always commits his reserves too early. Use that." Rodriguez's voice cut in. "You're certain about his behavior pattern?" Layla nodded, wincing. "He's aggressive but proud. He wants decisive wins. Feed him a false victory, he'll walk right into the kill box." Phoenix watched her through the medbay glass, one arm crossed, the other holding a clipboard he wasn't reading. She looked smaller now, framed by machines, but her presence filled the room. He realized that leadership wasn't volume, it was gravity. That night, while the ship prepared for redeployment, Phoenix slipped into the medbay again. She was reviewing satellite feeds, a pen tapping against her leg brace. "You know, Command's calling this Operation Harbinger," he said. "Dramatic. Fitting." She smiled faintly. "You worried?" "Always." "Good," she replied. "Means you're thinking. Fear's a tool, not a weakness." He studied her. "You're different." "So are you," she said quietly. 3 weeks ago you were sure I was gone. I was sure you deserved peace." Her eyes softened. Peace isn't the same as absence, Phoenix. Sometimes the fight is the peace. He had no answer for that. 12 hours later, the Blackhawks roared back into the sky. SEAL Team 3 was airborne again. Same crew, new scars. The desert spread below like an ocean of rust and silence. Layla's voice guided them through encrypted comms from the baton. She was calm, almost detached, but Phoenix could hear something beneath the professionalism, an ache, a hunger to be out there herself. Approaching Waypoint Delta, Reaper reported. Copy, Layla replied. Thermal shows 2 patrols east of the compound. Wait for overlap and move during the blind interval. Her commands were crisp, no hesitation. Even through static, the team felt her presence. They reached the target ridge at 2:40 hours. Below lay the Wagner Iranian base, rows of vehicles, tents, radar arrays glowing under moonlight. A war in waiting. Phoenix crouched behind a dune, scanning through night optics. Visual on main compound, 2 guard towers, reinforced HQ tent in the center. Layla's voice came through. That's Volkov's command post. He'll stay close to his comm truck, hit that first. Without it, they're blind. Roger that. He glanced at Titan. Set charges along the eastern fence. We'll breach on my mark. Titan grinned, tape between his teeth. Feels familiar. Let's hope it ends the same way, Phoenix muttered. From the medbay, Layla watched the drone feed. Each green figure on her screen was someone she loved more than she'd ever admit. Every explosion risked becoming a folded flag. She wanted to be there, to share the danger, the weight, the clarity that only battle brings. Instead, she sat surrounded by machines, tethered to tubes that reminded her she was human. A nurse entered quietly. You should rest, ma'am. Layla didn't look up. After they do. At 2:58, the breach went live. The desert erupted in flame and chaos. Phoenix's team stormed through the eastern gap, rifles snapping in controlled bursts. Reaper's shots sang from above, perfect, surgical, merciless. Guards fell before they could shout. Spectre's charges detonated in sequence, shredding fuel depots and comm towers. From her screen, Layla whispered, "That's it, that's the rhythm." Her pulse quickened with every flash of light. And then she saw him. A tall man in body armor, white streak in his beard, Volkov. He was shouting orders, rallying his men too soon, just as she'd predicted. "Phoenix," she said, voice low. "He's committing reserves, east flank. You have a 60-second window. Hit the south corridor now." "Copy." Phoenix moved. Explosions painted the night orange. He felt the ground tremble as Titan's machine gun raked the enemy line. The ambush folded exactly as planned. For a moment it felt clean, efficient, perfect. Then came the counterpunch. "Contact north, RPGs." Reaper's voice cracked through the comms. A missile streaked overhead, slamming into the dune near their position. Sand and shrapnel tore through the air. Spectre went down hard, armor smoking. "Spectre's hit," Doc yelled. Phoenix dragged him behind cover, adrenaline burning away exhaustion. "Doc, stabilize him. Titan suppressing fire now." Back on the baton, Layla gripped the console, watching it unfold in thermal chaos. Her voice stayed even. "You're in crossfire. Pull 30 meters west and use the terrain brake." "Negative," Phoenix shouted. "If we move now, they'll flank the comm truck." "Phoenix, listen to me." But the line cut. Static roared in her ear. The drone feed fuzzed out to black. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, don't do this to me." She slammed the console once, pain shooting up her arm. The nurse rushed back in. "Lieutenant." Layla ignored him. "Reroute the signal through backup satellite relay, now." Within seconds, the feed snapped back. Smoke blanketed the base. Bodies moved like shadows through firelight. And there Phoenix dragging Spectre, Titan limping behind. Layla's chest tightened. "Don't you dare die on me," she breathed. Package secured, Phoenix grunted into the comms. Comm truck destroyed. Secondary detonations spreading. We're pulling back to LZ. Copy, Rodriguez answered from command. Extraction inbound in 6. Phoenix looked back once at the burning base. Flames clawed toward the stars. Volkov's body lay half buried in sand, face turned to the sky. He felt no triumph, just the weight of necessity. War never gave you victory, it gave you relief, temporary, fleeting, cold. When the helicopters lifted the team out, dawn was breaking again. From the baton, Layla watched the live feed of the extraction. She leaned back, exhausted, trembling. Tears slipped down her face before she could stop them. She didn't know if it was relief, pride, or something darker. Maybe all three. Rodriguez entered quietly, folding his arms. "It worked," he said. "Your plan saved them." Layla wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "It wasn't the plan that saved them, sir." "No. It was belief. They believed I was still one of them." Rodriguez studied her for a moment. "And are you?" She smiled faintly. "Ask me when I can walk again." Hours later, Phoenix found her asleep, sitting upright, headset still around her neck. He removed it gently, placing it on the table. For a long moment, he just watched her, the rise and fall of her breathing, the quiet strength beneath the bandages. He'd seen men break from far less. But she hadn't just survived, she'd transformed. He whispered softly, more to himself than to her, "You're not coming back from this, are you?" Her eyes opened halfway. "Who says I want to?" Days passed. The baton sailed home under orders to stand by for redeployment. The team debriefed, cleaned weapons, slept in fragments. Layla's story spread through the fleet like an electric current. The SEAL who died and risen. The ghost who outplanned her captors from a hospital bed. To most, it was legend. To her, it was penance. Each night, when the corridors quieted, she reached for the small chain on her bedside table, the beacon, the same device that had screamed through static 3 weeks after her death. She held it in her palm until dawn, its cold metal pressing into her skin. "Next time," she whispered to it, "I won't need saving." Phoenix met Rodriguez on deck one evening, as the sun melted into the sea. "How's she holding up?" he asked. Rodriguez exhaled. "Physically, she'll walk again. Mentally, that's a different war." Phoenix nodded. "We all fight that one." Rodriguez looked toward the horizon. The brass is talking medals, citations, maybe even a presidential address. "She'll hate it," Phoenix said. "I know." The commander turned to him. "You think she'll ever go back out there?" Phoenix thought about it, the fire in her eyes, the refusal to rest. He already knew the answer. She never left. That night, Layla recorded a classified statement for Naval Intel. Her voice was steady, deliberate. "What happened in that facility wasn't just an attack on me. It was a test. They wanted to see how far America's promise extends, how deep our loyalty runs when hope looks impossible. Well, they have their answer." She paused, eyes glistening. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." What happens after you survive the impossible? For Layla Allen, survival wasn't an ending, it was the beginning of a quieter war. The one no one trains you for. Weeks had passed since the raid in Syria. The USS Bataan had returned to Bahrain for debrief and refit. The air was hot, the sea blindingly blue, the kind of beauty that felt wrong after so much blood. Layla walked now, though slowly, every step a reminder of what her body had endured. Scar tissue pulled tight under her ribs. Her breath came shallow, but she kept moving, always forward. Doctors called it recovery, she called it duty. The ship's gym had been cleared for her therapy sessions. Metal sweat silence. Each morning she faced her reflection in the mirror, bandages under her shirt, bruises fatting from purple to yellow, and started again. One rep, one breath, one more reminder that she was alive. Take it easy, the physical therapist said for the 100th time. She nodded, then added 5 more pounds. Pain was predictable. It made sense. It obeyed physics. The rest of the world didn't. At night she dreamt of concrete walls, the click of a door, the rasp of a foreign voice. But what woke her wasn't fear. It was anger, not at them, but at herself. She survived, yes, but others hadn't. Phoenix visited often, never staying long. He'd stand by the door, arms folded, pretending to check on progress reports. She knew better. "You still can't sit still," he said one afternoon. "You still hover," she replied without looking up. He smiled faintly. "You're supposed to be resting." "This is resting. You should have seen me at week 2. He watched her stretch, the controlled precision of someone forcing her body to obey again. "Med board says you'll be cleared for duty in 6 weeks. She gripped the parallel bars. "I'll be ready in 4. Why rush it?" She looked at him, sweat glinting on her brow. "Because someone out there thinks they broke me, and I want them to know they didn't." He nodded slowly. "Revenge." "Correction," she said. "Revenge feels personal. This is balance." That evening, Rodriguez called them both to the operations center. The air was thick with quiet tension. A classified directive glowed on the screen. Subject: Medal of Honor consideration, Lieutenant Layla Allen. Phoenix felt his chest tighten. She doesn't even know yet. Rodriguez exhaled. She'll find out soon. The president's office wants to make it public. Phoenix rubbed the back of his neck. She'll hate it. I know, Rodriguez said, but sometimes symbols matter more than comfort. The world needs heroes, especially the kind who shouldn't have survived. He paused. There's something else. The Iranians filed a formal protest at the UN. They're calling the rescue an act of aggression. Russia's backing them. Things are shifting. Backlash, Phoenix muttered. We saved one of our own, and now the world's on fire. Rodriguez nodded grimly. That's politics. Heroes make great headlines, but they also make great targets. The next morning, Layla found out. She was sitting on the ship's deck, sunlight cutting through the mist, when a young ensign approached with a tablet. Ma'am, Admiral Chen requests your acknowledgement of this. Layla scanned the screen, the citation draft. Her name, her rank, her actions, words like valor, sacrifice, inspiring courage under duress. She read it twice, then lowered the tablet. They want to turn 3 weeks of torture into a speech, she said quietly. The ensign hesitated. It's meant as an honor. She forced a smile. Tell them I'll think about it. When he left, she looked out over the water. The horizon was endless, the same color as the desert sky. And she thought, they buried me once, now they want to resurrect me on camera. Maybe dying had been easier. That night, Phoenix found her alone on deck again. He'd seen the news already, networks buzzing with speculation about the miracle seal. She didn't look at him when she said, they're rewriting the story already. How bad? They made it sound noble, clean. They left out the screaming. He leaned on the railing beside her. That's how stories work, Layla. The truth makes people uncomfortable. Good, she said. Maybe it should. For a while they said nothing, just listened to the sea slap against the hull. Then she asked quietly, you ever wonder why we do it? Why we keep volunteering for the impossible? He thought about it, because someone has to. She shook her head. No, because deep down we're afraid of what we'd be without it. Phoenix glanced at her. The wind caught her hair, framing her face against the fading light. She looked older now, harder, but there was still a kind of grace in the exhaustion. She turned to him suddenly. You ever think about the ones we couldn't save? Every day. Me too, she whispered. That's why I can't stop. In the following days, the ship's routine shifted. The SEALs trained, repaired gear, and tried not to think about the next call. Layla, still on medical profile, spent her time analyzing field reports. The more she read, the The clearer it became, Wagner wasn't finished. Their network ran deeper than intelligence guessed. Iran was just one thread. There were others: Yemen, Lebanon, Africa. She saw the patterns, the logistics trails, the encrypted signals that whispered of something bigger coming. But every time she mentioned it, she got the same polite answer. "Not your concern right now, Lieutenant. Focus on recovery." She'd survived captivity, but now she was a prisoner of procedure. One afternoon, Admiral Chen herself arrived aboard Baton. The deck crew lined up in the sun, uniforms sharp, faces solemn. Layla met her in the ready room, standing, not sitting, against the medic's advice. The Admiral's presence filled the room, calm, precise, respectful. "Lieutenant Allen," she began, "the nation owes you its gratitude. The President has approved the Medal of Honor. You'll receive it at the White House next month." Layla's jaw tightened. "With respect, ma'am, I don't want it." The Admiral studied her. "Why?" Layla took a slow breath. "Because people will see the medal, not the truth. They'll see survival, not suffering. They'll think I'm strong because I lived, not because I broke and stood back up." Chen regarded her for a long moment. "You're right, they'll simplify you, but sometimes symbols are necessary. They give hope." Layla's voice was calm, but her eyes glistened. "Hope shouldn't be built on someone else's pain." The Admiral nodded slightly. "Then wear it for them, the ones who didn't come home. Let it speak for them instead." Layla didn't answer. But later, when she was alone, she found herself touching the small chain around her neck, the one holding her beacon. Maybe that was what the Admiral meant. Some symbols weren't about pride, they were about memory. That night, Phoenix sat with her in the mess hall long after it emptied. The hum of generators filled the silence. "You're really going to refuse it?" he asked. "I haven't decided." "You deserve it." She gave him a tired smile. "Deserves a funny word in our world." He leaned forward. "You think it cheapens what you went through?" "No," she said softly. "I think it forgets it." He nodded slowly. "Then don't take it for you, take it for us, for the team, for the idea that we don't leave anyone behind." She looked at him then, really looked. And something in his tone, quiet and certain, broke through the wall she'd built around herself. "All right," she whispered, "but if I do, you're standing next to me." He smiled. "Wouldn't be anywhere else." The following weeks blurred together. Press briefings, security clearances, psych evals that asked how she felt about being alive. Each question was harder than the last. But behind the noise, a darker truth was unfolding. Wagner wasn't done. The intel leaks she'd noticed weren't coincidences. Drone footage showed convoys moving at night. Names resurfaced: Iranian handlers, Russian contractors, Chinese logistics advisors. They weren't retreating, they were regrouping. And Layla knew, deep down, she wasn't meant to be a symbol on a podium. She was meant to finish what she started. The night before their departure home, she stood again on deck, the beacon warm in her palm. The stars above seemed closer out here, sharper somehow. Phoenix joined her quietly. "Tomorrow we head stateside," he said. "I heard. You ready for that ceremony?" "No," she said honestly, "but I'll stand there anyway." They watched the waves for a long time, the silence between them filled with everything neither could say aloud. Then Layla spoke softly, almost to herself. "They buried me once, Phoenix. This time I'll decide when the story ends." He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Just promise me something." "What?" "When it does end, make sure it's on your terms." She smiled faintly. "It always was." "How do you walk into a world that already buried you?" Layla Allen stared through the cabin window as the military transport banked over Washington, D.C. The city shimmered below, marble, monuments, and order. She'd seen it before, but never from this angle, the view of someone who wasn't supposed to be alive. The pilot's voice came over comms. Approaching Andrews Air Force Base, ma'am. Welcome home. Home, the word felt foreign. She pressed a hand against the glass. The reflection looking back at her wasn't the one people remembered. That woman, the one in recruitment posters, the one smiling in a uniform untouched by war, was gone. What remained was leaner, quieter, and far less certain of what the word hero meant. Outside, the air was sharp with winter. Cameras waited beyond the tarmac fences, journalists lining up for a glimpse of the Navy's miracle ghost. Phoenix and the rest of SEAL Team 3 walked beside her as they disembarked, forming an instinctive shield against the flashes. Joker muttered under his breath, "Never thought we'd need formation for paparazzi." Reaper smirked faintly, "Different battlefield, same noise." Layla didn't respond. Her focus stayed ahead on the black SUV idling at the edge of the runway, engine humming. Inside waited Admiral Chen and a pair of Secret Service agents. "Lieutenant Allen," the Admiral greeted her as she stepped in, "you're cleared for tomorrow's ceremony. The President will present the medal himself." Layla nodded politely, understood. Chen studied her in the rearview mirror. "You don't seem thrilled." "I'm not built for spotlights, ma'am." "None of us are," the Admiral replied. "But sometimes the light isn't for you. It's for everyone else who needs to believe." Layla looked out the window again. "Belief doesn't need a medal." "No," Chen said quietly, "but symbols endure longer than people." That night the hotel suite felt wrong. Too quiet, too clean. The bed was soft, impossibly soft, and she hated it. She lay there in darkness, eyes open, listening for sounds that weren't there. No boots, no metal doors, no dripping pipes. Just the ticking of a luxury clock that refused to stop. She tried to sleep, but her body wouldn't allow it. Too used to concrete, to discomfort. Too aware that silence wasn't safety, it was the echo that came before chaos. At 2:00 a.m. she got up and ran. Down the service stairs, out into the city streets. No guards, no escort, just the rhythm of her shoes hitting the cold pavement. She ran past monuments and memorials, faces carved into stone, men who'd fought, bled, died, and become stories. She wondered if any of them would have wanted it. When she finally stopped, she was standing at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Black granite, names carved into infinity. She reached out and pressed her fingers to the surface. Cold, smooth, eternal. Her reflection merged with the engraved names. For a long time she just stood there, breathing quietly. "Tell me what to say tomorrow," she whispered, "because I don't know how to make sense of it." The next morning came with sunlight and ceremony. The White House lawn was a stage, flags, cameras, uniforms lined in perfect symmetry. Reporters whispered. Soldiers stood at attention. Phoenix and the rest of SEAL Team 3 occupied the front row, their dress blues crisp but their eyes heavy. They didn't want to be here either, but they'd come because this was her moment, even if she didn't want it. When the band began to play, Layla stepped forward. Every movement precise, every emotion buried under discipline. The President greeted her with a solemn nod. "Lieutenant Layla Allen," he said, his voice carrying through the open air, "for acts of valor and unwavering courage under the most extreme adversity." She only half heard the words. The rest of the world faded, faces blurring, sound dimming, until there was just the weight of the medal being placed around her neck. It was heavier than she expected, colder too. She stared straight ahead, her chin lifted, and smiled because that's what they needed her to do. Applause followed, cameras flashed. Somewhere in the crowd, her younger sister sobbed softly. Layla didn't cry, she couldn't, not here. Afterward, the ceremony bled into receptions and photo ops. Officials shook her hand. Senators called her inspiration. A news anchor whispered something about America's Phoenix. She wanted to laugh at the irony. When it was finally over, she escaped to a quiet hallway and found Phoenix waiting there, leaning against the wall, tie loose, expression unreadable. "Congratulations," he said softly. She glanced down at the medal. For what? For surviving. She exhaled through her nose. Feels more like a reminder. Phoenix studied her. You think they'll ever understand? No, she said, and maybe that's okay. Some things aren't meant to be understood, just remembered. Later that night, the White House was quiet. Guests gone, corridors empty. Layla stood alone in the residence garden, the city lights shimmering beyond the trees. Rodriguez found her there, couldn't sleep. She smiled faintly, haven't in months. He nodded toward the medal hanging from her neck. It suits you. No, she said simply, it suits what they want to see. Rodriguez folded his arms. You earned it. Maybe, she said, but it doesn't bring them back. He hesitated. You're talking about your team. Her gaze was distant. All of them, the ones who never got their beacons heard. The commander nodded slowly. I get that. She looked at him. Do you ever wonder if we've gone too far, if we've turned heroism into theater? He sighed. Every day. But then I remember people need stories. They hold the line when the truth feels too heavy. Layla turned away, her voice barely audible. I'm tired of being a story. The following morning she was gone before sunrise. No security detail, no car, just a note left for Phoenix. Taking a walk before they turned me into a headline again. He found her hours later at Arlington National Cemetery, standing alone between the rows of white stones. The wind was cold, the sky gray, the grass still damp with dew. She was holding her beacon, the same one that had called them through static and miles of desert. Phoenix approached quietly. You always did like early mornings. She didn't look up. They're honest, no noise yet. He stood beside her. Together they looked out across the endless lines of graves, symmetry stretching into silence. Layla spoke softly. You ever wonder why they line them up so perfectly? Order, he said. Maybe, she murmured. Or maybe it's so we never forget how many it takes to make one miracle. She traced a fingertip along the edge of a headstone. I buried a lot of people in my head while I was down there, she said. And sometimes I think, maybe I should have stayed buried too. Phoenix's voice was steady. You're here for a reason, Layla. She smiled faintly. You sound like command. I'm not talking about orders. I'm talking about purpose. He paused. You didn't come back just to be thanked. You came back to finish something. She turned to him slowly. Then help me. He met her gaze. You know I will. Back at the Pentagon that afternoon, Rodriguez was in a closed briefing with the Joint Chiefs. On the table were classified photos, satellite images of new Wagner movements in Africa, encrypted chatter between Iranian officers, traces of something larger forming in the shadows. When Layla walked in, every conversation stopped. She wasn't in uniform, just plain black clothes, the medal absent. Lieutenant Allen, one general began, this is a closed. I know, she said, that's why I'm here. Rodriguez gave her a warning look. She ignored it. She placed a small drive on the table. You're missing something. The patterns in your intel, they're not random. They're coordination. The generals exchanged glances. You have evidence. She nodded. Encrypted comms from my captivity. I memorized fragments. I've been cross-referencing since we left the Gulf. Rodriguez looked at her sharply. You've been doing analysis during recovery. She met his eyes. You think I was sleeping. The room fell silent. Layla continued, you're fighting a network, not a nation. They call it the Accord. Wagner, Iranian Quids, Chinese advisors, North Korean techs. They share intelligence and resources. The next strike won't be in Syria. It'll be global. A long silence followed. Then one of the generals asked, what do you suggest, Lieutenant? She looked at Rodriguez, then at Phoenix, who had quietly entered behind her. I suggest, she said, you let the people who don't exist handle it. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. You're volunteering. Layla's gaze was unflinching. I didn't survive to sit behind glass, sir. Send me back. But this time I choose the mission. That night she stood again on the Lincoln Memorial steps, the city lights rippling across the reflecting pool. Her hand brushed the metal around her neck. It felt like a chain. She unclasped it slowly and held it up to the sky. For a long moment she just stared at it, the way it caught the light, the way it whispered of glory and grief all at once. Then she lowered it, whispered something only the night could hear, and tucked it into her jacket pocket beside the beacon. 2 symbols. One given, one earned. One she'd wear for them, and one she'd carry for herself. What happens when the dead volunteer for war? Layla Allen's file still listed her as KIA Syria, 3 weeks confirmed. It stayed that way. Rodriguez made sure of it. The fewer who knew she was alive, the freer she could move. Officially, she was a casualty turned symbol. Unofficially, she was the spear of something new. They called it Task Force Eclipse, a joint shadow unit designed to dismantle the emerging alliance she'd uncovered: the Accord, Wagner operatives, Iranian intelligence, Chinese tacticians, North Korean cyber cells, a web of nations bound by shared enemies and silent ambition. The mission wasn't sanctioned publicly. It didn't need to be. Some wars survive in the margins, fought by ghosts who don't salute in daylight. Layla was one of them now. The desert had given her scars. Captivity had given her patience. But this new war would demand something else entirely: faith in people she didn't yet trust. The first meeting took place in a hangar in northern Jordan. No flags, no ranks, just 12 soldiers from 5 countries who didn't belong anywhere else. Operators who'd seen too much and lived anyway. Rodriguez stood at the head of the group, hands behind his back. "You all know why you're here," he said. "Intel confirms the Accord is expanding into Africa. They're recruiting militias, buying infrastructure, controlling oil routes and data lines. They're not building armies, they're buying futures." He nodded toward Layla. "Lieutenant Allen will be your field lead." Every head turned toward her. She stood still, the desert wind tugging at her jacket. Her voice was low, steady. "You've read the reports. You've seen what they're capable of. I've lived it, so I won't give you speeches about patriotism or payback. All I'll say is this: if we don't stop them now, someone else will have to later, and they'll bleed more for it." Silence. Then Titan, massive, calm, familiar, cracked a grin. "Guess that's our version of a pep talk." The group chuckled. Layla smiled faintly. "I'm not good at pep, I'm good at plans." They trained hard. Jordanian airfields, Israeli shooting ranges, underground bunkers outside Riyadh. Layla rebuilt herself in those weeks, muscle by muscle, breath by breath. The pain never went away, but it became fuel. Each scar reminded her of why she was still moving. Each nightmare reminded her what happened when she stopped. Phoenix watched her from the sidelines. He joined as deputy lead at Rodriguez's insistence and her silent relief. He'd seen her at her weakest and her fiercest. He knew the difference between her silence and her calm. One night, during a break on the tarmac, he found her cleaning her rifle under the floodlights. "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" She chambered around with a sharp click. "Remembering who I was before they tried to unmake me." He nodded slowly. "And who's that?" She glanced at him, a spark of something old in her eyes. "A SEAL, not a survivor, there's a difference." Their first mission was reconnaissance, Somalia. A port city swallowed by warlords and mercenaries, now run by Wagner intermediaries under the Accord. Their objective: confirm the location of a rumored communications hub, the link between Africa and the Middle East operations. Layla led from the front. The night smelled of salt and diesel. The team moved through the ruins of a half-destroyed port warehouse, shadows against shadows. "Visual on target," whispered Joker. "Guard rotation every 3 minutes. Satellite dish active." Layla nodded. "Spectre, prep the breach drone. No noise until we've confirmed the relay." They moved like ghosts, the kind that didn't haunt, they hunted. Inside, the hum of servers filled the air. Blue light flickered over walls covered in cables and crates. Titan whispered, "Feels too easy." He was right. The trap sprung in silence, a door locking behind them, floodlights flaring. Layla's instinct screamed, "Ambush positions." Gunfire erupted, shadows became targets. Her body moved before thought, 2 controlled bursts, a pivot, another target down. Pain lanced her ribs, but she ignored it. "Reaper Overwatch," she shouted. "Negative," came the static-filled reply. "I'm pinned." "Spectre, smoke and exit west." They fought their way out, bullets shredding walls, smoke choking the air. Layla covered the rear, rifle steady despite her shaking hands. They broke into open night, sprinting toward the extraction point. The roar of rotor blades greeted them as the helicopter appeared low over the coast. They dove aboard, breath ragged, adrenaline still singing. "Anyone hit?" she asked. "Doc grazed," Titan said, binding a wound. "Otherwise clear." Phoenix looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded, exhaling hard. "They knew we were coming." Back on base, Rodriguez's face was carved from stone. "They were ready for you," he said, meaning someone feeding intel. Layla stared at the mission feed. "A leak." "Somewhere high," Rodriguez confirmed. "We're checking comm encryption." She leaned over the table, jaw tight. "Sir, permission to run internal vetting. Everyone on this team, including me." Rodriguez studied her. "You think it's one of yours?" "I think trust is earned," she said flatly, "and I don't deal in assumptions anymore." Phoenix met her eyes, not with doubt but worry. He'd seen what paranoia could do. But he also knew she wasn't wrong. That night Layla couldn't sleep. The desert air outside her tent was cold, the stars sharp as blades. She sat alone, disassembling and reassembling her sidearm by touch. Every click echoed. She thought about her time in captivity, the interrogators who had said she'd break. That truth always came out under pain. Maybe they'd been half right. Pain revealed truth. Just not theirs, hers. She was realizing something about herself, something that scared her more than dying had. She needed the fight. Not for revenge, not even for justice, for clarity. War stripped away noise. It made the world simple again. She hated that she loved it. Phoenix found her sitting there when the horizon began to glow. "You didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did you." He sat beside her in the dust. "You can't keep burning like this, Layla." She glanced at him. "You think I'm falling apart." "I think you're trying not to." She was silent for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Do you ever think about what happens after, when there's no mission left?" He nodded. "Every day." "What do you see?" "Still figuring that out." She smiled faintly. "That's what scares me. When I stop fighting, I don't know who I'll be." Phoenix looked toward the rising sun. "Then maybe the mission isn't what you think it is." She frowned, meaning. "Maybe it's not about killing what you hate," he said quietly. "Maybe it's about protecting what you love." She let the words hang there, fragile, dangerous, true. 2 days later, the investigation concluded. The leak had come from a compromised satellite relay, not the team. They were clear. But the damage was done. Rodriguez gathered them. "We've confirmed the Accord is targeting U.S. embassies in the region. You'll intercept an arms transfer in Yemen within 48 hours." Layla's gaze hardened. "We'll need full blackout protocols." "Already in place." As the team dispersed, Phoenix lingered. "You sure you're ready for another hit so soon?" She adjusted her gear, expression unreadable. Ready isn't the word, necessary is. That night, as they prepped gear for deployment, Titan approached her with something in his hand, a small steel tag engraved with coordinates. "What's this?" she asked. "Location of that compound in Iran," he said, "where we found you." Her jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because I figured you might want to go back someday." She stared at it for a long moment, then closed her fingers around it. "Not yet," she said, "but soon." Titan nodded. "We'll go with you." She looked up, eyes glinting in the firelight. "I know." Later, before boarding, Phoenix caught her alone. "You know this doesn't end clean," he said. "It never does." "I'm serious, Layla. You keep chasing ghosts long enough, one day you'll become one." She stepped closer, the wind whipping her hair across her face. "Maybe that's the point," she whispered. "Ghosts move where the living can't." He wanted to argue, but there was something in her tone, not arrogance, not despair, just truth. He sighed. "Then promise me one thing." "What?" "When this is over, let it be over." Her answer was quiet, if it ever is. The helicopter lifted off, blades cutting through dawn. Below, the desert stretched endless and unforgiving. Inside, Layla closed her eyes, feeling the vibration through her bones. She thought of the medal still tucked in her locker, the beacon still hanging around her neck, the coordinates now resting in her pocket. 3 reminders of who she'd been, 3 promises of who she still had to be. She wasn't fighting for glory anymore, or revenge. She was fighting for the right to never be buried again. What do you do when the war you've been fighting ends, but the one inside you does? Layla Allen sat in the open cargo bay of a C-17, wind whipping through the fuselage. Below, the world was shadow and sand, Yemen, or what was left of it. She watched the desert scroll by, eyes fixed, heartbeat steady. The mission brief was simple. Intercept the Accord's main logistics node, destroy the data hub, capture or eliminate its director, codename Architect. The man behind her 3 weeks in captivity. But missions were never just missions anymore. This one was personal. They landed under blackout, no lights, no chatter, no footprints. Eclipse moved like mist through the dunes, infrared gear painting the world in spectral green. The compound sat against a cliffside, half buried, half built into the rock. Concrete, steel, guard towers disguised as communication masts. Layla crouched in the sand, scanning through her scope. Multiple tangos, 3 shifts. No civilians, Reaper whispered through comms. "Copy," Layla replied. "Spectre drones up, Phoenix with me, Titan flank left." Phoenix gave her a look, the kind that wasn't just tactical. "You sure you want to be point?" She didn't answer, just checked her weapon. "I'll take that as yes," he muttered. The moon slid behind clouds. The night held its breath. Then they moved. Inside the perimeter, silence fractured into chaos. The first sentry dropped before he even turned. 2 more followed. Layla's team advanced in perfect rhythm, precise, controlled violence. She could feel the echo of every step, the same corridors, the same architecture. They built this place like the one that had held her. Down in her chest, something twisted. Memory and mission, overlapping like ghosts. "Dock breach right," she whispered. "Stacking." The door exploded inward, shouting, muzzle flashes, a storm of light and sound. Phoenix covered her flank as she swept the hall, her voice calm over the gunfire. Left clear, moving forward. By the time they reached the core chamber, half the compound was burning. Servers crackled, alarms blared. And in the center, the architect stood waiting. He wasn't what she remembered, thinner, older, a face hollowed by arrogance and fear. He raised his hand slowly, smiling faintly. "You came back. I wondered if you would." Layla leveled her rifle at his chest. "You talk too much." He chuckled. You should thank me, you're famous now. They made you into something divine. She stepped closer, barrel steady. You tortured me. I tested you, he said, and you passed. Look at you, resurrected, glorified. You became the weapon they always wanted. Phoenix's voice cut through the tension. Don't listen to him, Layla. But she wasn't listening, not really. She was remembering the cell, the light flickering, the sound of his footsteps outside the door, the smell of iron and dust. She could still feel it on her skin. Her finger tightened on the trigger, then stopped. He watched her closely. Go on, finish it, become me. For a long, fragile second, the air itself seemed to tremble. Then she lowered the rifle. You don't get to define me, she said quietly. Not anymore. She stepped back, Phoenix. He understood instantly. One shot sent her mass clean. The architect fell, eyes still open, expression unreadable. They set the charges and withdrew, the compound collapsing into itself behind them. Flames licked the horizon, painting the desert orange. The extraction bird arrived just before dawn. The sky bled pink over the dunes as Layla climbed aboard, turning once to watch the smoke rise. Phoenix joined her, helmet under his arm. You could have killed him yourself. She looked out the open hatch. I already did, just not with a bullet. Back at base, Rodriguez debriefed them in silence. The operation was a success. The Accord's command network fractured within hours. Without the architect, their coordination died. But victory didn't feel like victory. It rarely did. That night the camp was still. Most of the team slept. Layla sat alone outside, the coordinates tag in her hand, the one Titan had given her. The desert wind was cold, carrying the scent of burnt sand. She looked up at the stars, infinite, indifferent. Phoenix approached quietly, hands in his pockets. You planning to go back there? He asked. She nodded, tomorrow. He hesitated, you want company. She shook her head, not this time. The next day she went alone. Back to the coordinates, back to the grave she'd escaped. The drive was long, the silence longer. By the time she reached the old compound ruins, the sun was high, baking the earth until it shimmered. The structure was gone. Only fragments remained, metal twisted by explosions, sand swallowing what was left. She walked through it slowly, tracing invisible paths her mind remembered too well. Here where they chained her. There where the beacon had been hidden, buried under a loose tile. She knelt, brushing dust from the ground until her fingers found the small crack in the concrete. The beacon's imprint was still faintly visible. For a moment she said nothing, just let the silence speak. Then she dug a shallow pit beside it and placed two things inside, the steel coordinates tag and her medal of honor. She covered them gently with sand. They can stay here, she whispered. Both of them belong to the same place. When she stood, her hands trembled not from weakness but release. On her way back, the radio crackled. Rodriguez's voice came through. Alan, you copy. Copy. You did it. Intel confirms the Accord's command chain is gone. You can stand down. She stared at the horizon. Standing down, she said softly, but she knew she never really would. Weeks later, Washington called again. Offers, interviews, speeches. She ignored most of them. One day, a letter arrived unsigned, but unmistakably from Admiral Chen. History remembers victories. People remember the ones who paid for them. You've done enough, Layla. The rest is peace. Try to let it find you. She folded the letter and slipped it into her locker beside a single item, the beacon. It was scratched, dented, still faintly humming, a ghost signal, pulsing once every few minutes like a heartbeat that refused to fade. Months passed. The world moved on. News cycles turned. Wars shifted. But sometimes, in quiet corners of the world, her name still surfaced. A rumor in briefing rooms, A whisper in secure channels. Alan's team. A glimpse. No record, no patch, no medals. And that was how she wanted it. One evening, somewhere in the Mediterranean, she stood on the deck of a small transport ship. The sea was calm, the horizon gold with sunset. Phoenix joined her, older now, lines deeper around his eyes. "You ever think about what it all meant?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Every day, I just stopped needing answers." He nodded. "You think it was worth it?" She looked at the water, endless, unknowable. "I think it had to be," she said. "Otherwise none of us could live with it." He was quiet for a moment. "You ever regret not taking the ceremony seriously?" She shook her head. "No, medals shine brighter in display cases than they do in daylight. I've seen enough daylight." Phoenix smiled. "You're still impossible." "Still alive, too," she said, eyes narrowing against the sun. "That's something." They stood there for a long time, neither speaking. The waves rolled softly against the hull, steady, eternal. Later that night, she found herself alone again. She pulled the old beacon from her pocket and set it on the railing. The little light blinked faintly, once every few seconds. Still alive, still calling. She stared at it, thinking of everything it had set in motion. Then she whispered to the sea, her voice calm and certain. "They buried me 3 weeks before I came back. Maybe that's what it takes to lose everything, just to remember what it means to stand." She picked up the beacon, turned it over in her palm, and smiled softly. "No more signals," she said. "No more rescues." And with a quiet exhale, she let it fall into the sea. The water swallowed it without a sound. She watched until the ripples disappeared, until there was nothing left but reflection. Then she whispered one last truth, not to anyone else but to herself. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak," she said. "It simply acts." The wind carried her words away. The horizon burned gold. And Layla Allen, the woman they buried, the soldier they resurrected, finally let the silence mean peace.